Joining me now, Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly. She's out with the new book, Settle for More. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But let's take a look at these appointments, these first appointments by Donald Trump right now. Steve Bannon, Reince Priebus, maybe Rudy Giuliani. To the victors go the spoils.
Absolutely right. And Trump's entitled to surround himself with the people who he most trusts. Bannon's really the only one so far who's caused a lot of controversy. I mean, it's sort of like a tale of two cities, where you've got Reince Priebus, who's more establishment, which Trump has been railing against, and then Steve Bannon, who's spent his entire career railing against the establishment.
That sets, and he says they are going to be equal partners. But what does that mean inside the White House? It could set up a kind of civil war.
I mean, it could be a little awkward, but what I'm hearing is Steve Bannon will really be in charge, that he's the Trump whisperer.
Even though he's not the chief of staff?
Yeah, that this is an unusual situation, because normally the chief of staff would be the one who is. What we're being told is Steve Bannon will really have the ear of Donald Trump. And I don't know what that means for Reince Priebus. Maybe President-elect Trump needs somebody who knows how to work the Hill and staffing decisions.
So that would suggest perhaps that President Obama was wrong in his judgment yesterday when he said that he doesn't think Donald Trump is ideological, thinks he's pragmatic.
Well, I think both are true. I mean, I think both are true, that he's not ideological and that he is pragmatic. And I think Steve Bannon, though he is a controversial figure, has advised Donald Trump very well. You remember Trump's campaign was really flailing until Bannon came in, a guy who doesn't run political campaigns, but who completely understands these working-class Americans who have had it with Washington and the so-called establishment.
What do you say to those critics who say this is bringing a white supremacist into the White House?
I don't know that there's evidence of that. You know, I mean, I think people need to be...
headlines?
The Breitbart headlines, his defenders, I mean, they're absolutely controversial. But what his defenders say is he's not responsible for every single headline that went up on Breitbart while he was the executive chairman, and that website is known for being provocative, and so they're looking for clicks. Now, it definitely appeals to a segment of the so-called alt-right, which includes some white supremacists. But I don't know that you could tar the entire team with that brush or Steve Bannon with that brush. But having said that, there's no question this man is controversial. So, you know,
we're going to talk more about your book coming up in the next half hour. You call 2016 your year of Trump, and it really details all of your encounters, the tough encounters. What does that tell you about what kind of president Donald Trump will be, and how can you put that all aside in covering him?
Well, I mean, I have a year of doing it. So, I mean, now it's easy to cover him because we're out of that weird place that we were in. It definitely posed his challenges when he was coming after me so relentlessly and causing security issues in my life and the life of my family. But I did it. And it was a test of me as a person and a professional, and I think my team and I, the Kelly File, managed to navigate it pretty well. But what it tells me about what kind of a president he would be, listen, there's no question that Donald Trump is thin-skinned, and he can be mean-spirited. He can be vindictive. But my own experience with him proves that he's able to let things go if he so chooses, right? He came after me like a dog with a bone for 9 months. But finally, when I went to see him at Trump Tower, and believe me, I was not conciliatory toward him, we got past it. I think he has a magnanimous piece of him. He has a charming piece to him as well. And while I think Trump doesn't like it when he feels attacked, if he feels like you're open-minded or at least neutral toward him, he becomes a bit more open-minded. The problem with him is he often feels attacked even when he's not.
And we're going to find out more about that meeting in our next half hour. Settle for More is out today. We're going to talk about that. Donald Trump, Roger Ailes, in our next half hour. Robin?
Okay, George,
But first, more from Megyn Kelly. Her new book, Settle for More, is out today. And we're going to talk to her after this quick look back at her rocky relationships with Donald Trump and her former boss, Roger Ailes.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals.
The feud began with that first question at the first debate.
What I say is what I say. And honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that.
A torrent of insults followed. Trump called Kelly a bimbo, unprofessional, and crazy.
You could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. I was referring to nose, ears. They're very common statements, and only a deviant would think of what people said.
He was so very focused on me that I became the story, and you know, you never want to be the story when you're a news person. You want to be covering the story.
Now in her new book, Settle for More.
It's a very personal book. It's revealing. It's been under an embargo. Basically, they would have to hurt you if you found it.
The Kelly File anchor reveals that her encounter with President-elect Trump actually began 6 months before he announced his run. She claims he tried to charm her with offers of trips and personal notes, and that Trump offered other journalists gifts clearly meant to shape coverage.
I had a meeting with Donald Trump.
Kelly also found herself part of the story after former colleague Gretchen Carlson filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against Fox chairman Roger Ailes. After Carlson spoke out, Kelly told her bosses that at the start of her career, Ailes made unwanted advances against her, too. Shortly after, Ailes was fired from Fox. And Megyn Kelly is back right now. Thanks for coming back. And let's start right there. You made that call to Fox co-chairman Lachlan Murdoch. What did you tell him?
Well, I mean, listen, I wrestled with what to do because I wasn't sure what the truth was about Roger.
You knew what he did to you.
Exactly. And that's one of the bizarre things about the story is that I knew my own experience, but he and I had gone on to have 9 years of a healthy working relationship. And so in my mind, I had attributed it to he was interested in me. He was having a marital difficulty. Perhaps he was just interested in having an extramarital affair. And I didn't know.
And he was explicit about that?
As explicit as you could be. I mean, it was very on the nose. And then it culminated in a physical attempt to be with me, which I rejected in his office. And then I contacted a lawyer. He tried to kiss me 3 times. So I rejected that. And when I rejected that, he asked me when my contract was up. As soon as I left his office, I called a lawyer, and I did bring the matter to a supervisor at Fox News.
Years ago.
Years ago when it happened to me. And that person vouched for Roger's character, assured me that he was a good man, that he was likely just smitten, and that I should try to avoid him, which is what I did.
As you know, Roger Ailes put out a statement through his attorney. It states, quote, "I categorically deny the allegations Megyn Kelly makes about me. I worked tirelessly to promote and advance her career." As Megyn herself admitted to Charlie Rose, watch that interview and decide for yourself. I want to show, this is what he was referring to on Charlie Rose.
I really care about Roger, and he's been nothing but good to me, and he's been very loyal, and he's had my back.
So how do you square that with what you're writing now?
Well, both things can be true. I mean, a woman can be harassed and then go on to have a good working relationship with the man harassing her. And that is what happened in my case. I avoided Roger for 6 months after my supervisor suggested that was the proper course to pursue. And sure enough, he stopped. And I was down in the DC Bureau when this was happening to me. He was up in New York. This is all laid out in the book in great detail. But he stopped and we went on to have a healthy working relationship. And what he said about promoting me and having my back over the next several years is true. And it was one of the reasons why even I found it hard to believe that he was a serial harasser, George, when the lawsuit broke and then women started coming forward anonymously. But it soon became clear to me upon reading the allegations that at least an investigation was necessary.
So did any part of you think, looking back, he should have come out earlier publicly?
Listen, it's hard to say no to that because I now know the number of women who were targeted, and it's disturbing. But realistically, and this is one of the reasons I wrote about this in the book, realistically, that would have been a suicide mission for me in my career because I'd been at the company for 12 months when he was doing this to me. I wasn't Megyn Kelly of today. I had no power. And he was on the cover of industry magazines as the most powerful man in news. There was no one to go to. You know, if I had gone to the general counsel of the company, it would have been me, first-year person, against the CEO of the company.
So it leads to a tough question for Fox News as well. If Gretchen Carlson hadn't sued, would Roger Ailes still be the chairman of Fox News?
I think so. I think so. I mean, because we all had arbitration clauses in our deals, which prevented us from filing public lawsuits, which is why Gretchen filing it publicly was a big deal and was an important step in this whole process. But I'll tell you, I mean, what I wanted was for it to be an open and honest investigation into him. That's all I really wanted, because I didn't know whether it was just me, just Gretchen, is this a serial problem or not? And that's why I called Lachlan Murdoch, to tell him, you know, it didn't bring me any joy, but just to tell him that this did happen to me 10 years earlier, and that they needed to take a hard look at who they had running the company. And within days, they had announced that they had hired Paul Weiss, and I cooperated with that investigation, and I think it wound up as it should have.
Let's talk a little bit more about Donald Trump. Take us inside that meeting where you guys basically tried to bury the hatchet. What did you say? What did you do?
So the actual meeting was off the record, so I don't want to get into the specific content, but I went over there, I walked in, and he gave me a nice greeting. He hugged me.
He hugged you?
Yes, which
How did you accept that?
Well, I talk about it in the book that it was bizarre, right, to be hugging this man who had tried to torment me for 9 months and who had endangered my security and all sorts of things that are detailed in the book. But I accepted it for the gesture it was, which I think was a goodwill gesture to try to say, if not, I'm sorry, then let's move on, which is what I was doing there. So I neither apologized to him, nor did he apologize to me. And after that meeting, which was very cordial, we discussed the state of the race. We did not discuss his 9-month campaign against me. We tabled that. But it just was a reset of sorts that worked for us.
You also had a tough conversation with your daughter Yardley. She said she was afraid of him.
So she's a recurring character in this book, as are all 3 of my children. But Yardley is amazing. And I talk about how a year ago, after I went to the Fortune Most Powerful Women's Conference, she said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, it's a gathering of really strong women who celebrate their accomplishments." And I was taking Yardley down there with me. And she said, "Are we 2 of them?" And then not quite a year later, she joined me at the presidential debate in Detroit, and that's when she told me she was afraid of Donald Trump. I had never revealed to her any of the things that Trump had done, President-elect Trump had done. But she is 5, and she hears things in this world, and one of the lowest points was when she came home and asked me what a bimbo was. And I just thought, the same girl who thought she was being honored at the Most Powerful Women's Conference had learned a new word, which was one of the low points of the year.
I'll bet it was. So what's next for you? Publicly, everyone knows your contract is up next year. Can you stay at Fox after all this?
Oh, sure. I mean, I can easily stay at Fox. I can go, hopefully, anywhere I want. I don't think anything that's happened this past year has limited that. I think Trump and I are, President-elect Trump, we're all getting used to saying that, are on better terms. And so I think he and I will be fine. And listen, I'm very grateful that Fox News has given me the 12 years I've had there and that they want me to stay. And in my opinion, the Murdochs who are running Fox News Channel now are honorable men who want to do what's right and have a great vision for Fox News.
Do you want to stay?
Well, I'm figuring that out, right? I mean, it's not really appropriate to discuss here with you, George. I'm on Good Morning America.
Ask.
But I'm figuring that out. Okay. As much as I love my job, I love those 3 little lives that my husband and I have brought into the world. And I mean, this is my philosophy that I need to settle for more. So I'm going to do that.
And that's the name of the book. Megyn Kelly, thanks for coming in. Michael, what's coming up on the big board?
All right, George, coming up on our big board.
Tough questions from Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly ignited a long-simmering public feud with President-elect Donald Trump. But a new book by Kelly claims that Trump's private treatment of her was even more threatening. Brian Todd has details of the explosive new allegations. Brian, what are you learning?
Wolf, tonight Megyn Kelly is saying that Donald Trump threatened her over the phone shortly before that first Republican debate last year. It is among some incendiary allegations in Kelly's new book, in which she claims that Trump came after her, quote, like a dog for months, and that she had to take security precautions for her family. New allegations tonight of a personal vendetta from President-elect Trump and a threat against one of the biggest stars in TV news. Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly says just days before she moderated the first presidential debate, Donald Trump called her. Kelly told Dr. Phil the candidate was not happy about one of her interviews.
He called me up and threatened me and made very clear to me that he was extremely displeased. He started screaming at me. He hung up the phone.
Trump was angry over Kelly's interview with an author who had discussed court testimony from Trump's first wife that Trump had raped her. Ivana Trump later said the allegation wasn't true. What was Trump's threat to Kelly? In her new book, Kelly writes that Trump said, quote, "I almost unleashed my beautiful Twitter account against you, and I still may."
You might not think, oh, that's that bad, but it's what happens with the followers that's really, really nasty and that can really, really hurt you and make you scared.
A few days after Trump's alleged threat, Kelly asked the candidate one of the most explosive questions in debate history.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president?
What I say is what I say. And honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry.
After that, Trump did unleash his Twitter account at Kelly, calling her a lightweight, overrated, crazy. Kelly says by doing that, Trump flipped a switch with his followers, who called her worse names, she says, and threatened her. She spoke to ABC about it.
It definitely posed his challenges when he was coming after me so relentlessly and causing security issues in my life and the life of my family. He came after me like a dog with a bone for 9 months.
Kelly writes that at one point, her young daughter told her she was scared of Donald Trump. Quote, "He wants to hurt me."
I think the questions about Donald Trump's temperament were the biggest single headwind that he faced in the election. And what the exit poll told us is that those concerns, those fears, those anxieties remained remarkably widespread, even among many people who voted for him.
Kelly says when she met Trump at his Manhattan home earlier this year, they got past their feud.
He has a magnanimous piece of him. He has a charming piece to him as well.
In the book, Kelly also has strong allegations against her former boss, Roger Ailes. She says the then Fox News chairman sexually harassed her repeatedly, starting in 2005. Ailes, who served as an advisor to the Trump campaign, vehemently denies the allegation. Now, we reached out repeatedly to President-elect Trump's transition team in calls, texts, and emails today for their response to Megyn Kelly's claims that Donald Trump threatened her. We have not heard back from them. Wolf?
Brian, there's also some criticism tonight of Megyn Kelly yourself for the timing, the release of this book.
A lot of people asking questions about that, Wolf. Eric Wempel of the Washington Post, their media critic, he says Kelly's decision to release the book after the election was, quote, an awful one. Eric Wempel says if she had information like that about Donald Trump, she should have released it before the election when it was relevant to who he was as a candidate. Eric Wempel points out other reporting from other news outlets like here at CNN, the Washington Post, New York Times. That reporting, he says, bounced off the public because it came from mainstream outlets. He says because Kelly works for Fox News, what she says has instant credibility with the people who might have voted for Trump. And he says she sat on that until after the election. Now, we've pressed Kelly's publisher for a response to Wempel's criticism. We have not gotten a response to that, Wolf.
All right, Brian, thanks very much. Brian Todd reporting. Coming up, new reporting on the infighting and the disarray inside Donald Trump's transition team. Plus, today's important milestone in the transition as the president-elect receives his first briefing on the nation's most important secrets.